It's going crazy. I haven't got anything else yet. That's those things of a Monday. That's good. Oh, you guys are next week. No, 2 weeks. End of. Yeah, no, just got to see. Okay, it's at 3:00. Okay. Yeah. I don't think so. But you can do the first one. Yeah. A little bit, yeah. Miles lives in Plainville. Right, because there's a off the first time. Oh, gee. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, because the other, because yes. Yeah, yeah. Steve's on duty. He retired, but he's, yeah, he's security. He was her security. Yeah. Yeah. I've done his number still. Yeah. Right, yeah. 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 What's the date of the day? Oh, that's why I know. Because I've been, yeah. I will see, well, maybe you might know something too, that's up there, something like, so, okay, I made myself a note. Right, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, okay, let me see what I can do, and then I'll do that tonight. Okay, I will be in touch. Okay, yep, bye. Yes. Oh, yeah. Good, sorry, just trying to get myself set up here, so I. Why is it when you zoom, you know, on Zoom all day, and you call it for meeting, and it says, oh, you need to update Zoom. It's like, really? You've had all day to do this. Where's everybody? With my co-chair. All right. It almost worked. Oh, so maybe that busted.
Old rug. Old rug smell. Do I need to sit here, right? You're laughing.
It's okay. I don't.
It's nice in here. I have no air conditioning, you know?
Really? So.
I know, I mean, I was falling asleep. Where did it go?
Yeah, this is plastic. I don't know. That's what I want to discuss. So, you know, you've given everybody my document. This is it. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Commission on Connecticut's Development and Future meeting, September 11th. It is 3:05 p.m. We do have a quorum, and so we'll begin our meeting. First order of business is the approval of the July 10th minutes, which were sent out. Do we have a motion to accept those?
So moved.
Thank you, Representative. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We'll take both seconds. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Any abstentions? Terrific. And the minutes are passed. Next order of business is the review of our draft final report, which has been sent out. As a quick recap, at our last meeting, we went through, which was actually 2 months ago, went through all of the recommendations. We did vote on all of those recommendations to be included into the final report, which has been sent out to everybody. We did ask all of the co-chairs of all the work group subcommittees to look through their sections to make sure everything was captured accurately. And that was done a couple of times over the past couple of months. So we do have a comprehensive report to be able to present in our final report. Is there any questions, any comments on the draft final report?
Mr. Heff, this is Tim Hollister. I did ask you for a couple of minutes. You tell me when that's appropriate, please. Thank you.
Sure. Well, Tim, why don't you go ahead now before we get into a vote on the report?
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Well, thank you and good afternoon, everyone. Sort of by way of reintroduction, I'm a land use and environmental attorney in private practice, and I work regularly with property owners, developers, and municipalities on affordable housing. And I co-chaired with Representative Lamar the Affordable Housing Plans Working Group. And I will say that in that co-chair role from late 2021 until the early part of this year, I concentrated on our report and our recommendations and trying to stay in my lane, so to speak, as a representative of that working group. But now, as we move to probably the last phase of our work as a commission and turn to recommendations of the General Assembly, I want to ask Mr. Heft if I could have maybe 3 or 4 minutes to just talk as an individual member, and specifically about the fact that the commission, one of the commission's assigned tasks is to make recommendations about affordable housing and infrastructure. And my hope is that our final report will not stop at just compiling and transmitting the individual recommendations of the individual working groups. So in that vein, I just would like to address 2 points, and this is in the nature of just putting it on the commission's radar screen for discussion. The first is 2 of the recommendations of my working group. And then second, I want to discuss the infrastructure recommendations that most directly affect multifamily and affordable housing, that being the report of the sewerage group. So starting with the affordable housing group, recommendation 1 is to ensure that all municipalities and their land use agencies comply with Public Act 2129, which contained a specific list of shalls and shall nots. And I'll just run through the list briefly. Promoting choice and economic diversity in housing is now mandatory. Towns cannot ban multifamily housing or cap the number or percentage of multifamily units. Zoning regulations must affirmatively further the purposes of the Federal Fair Housing Act. Minimum floor area requirements that exceed the building or health code are not valid. Excessive parking rules are invalid, albeit with an opt-out procedure. Standards for alternative dwelling units are provided with an opt-out procedure. Commissions cannot deny applications to preserve the character of the town, and there cannot be excessive application fees. My simple point is that, as our working group reported, in the municipal affordable housing plans that were written between late 2021 and early 2023, which our group reviewed, relatively few towns paid attention to these requirements, even though they are already part of state law. Another way to put that is there are, simply put, dozens of towns that are not in compliance with these already adopted changes, required changes in the regulations. So my hope is that this commission would see fit to recommend to the General Assembly that there be a specific deadline for compliance. And, again, I understand unfunded mandates and limited resources and all that stuff, but I don't think that complying with the already adopted law should be a heavy lift or cost for towns, and it is the law. Second, as to our group's recommendation number 3, we have in our report a list of 28 specific recommendations for every municipal affordable housing plan going forward. The checklist that everybody's been asking for. Our work group identified a lack of specifics in many plans already filed, and we believe the checklist is a way to address and to direct towns going forward to try again with these specific recommendations, the checklist in hand. So again, my hope is that we will recommend to the General Assembly that the towns be asked to review and revise their reports. I'll just say for now, sooner rather than later, rather than waiting for the next 5-year plan. And again, just trying to be sensitive to all viewpoints, let me note that these recommendations, in my view, and I think the view of my working group, are not state government usurping local control, but direction to revise or approve regulations that are simply not necessary or don't serve a valid land use regulatory purpose, but to adopt best practices. Okay, let me move on to the sewerage group report, which I will absolutely agree did a magnificent job, wrote a great report. So I'm trying to advance the ball one step further than what they did. No secret that multifamily and affordable housing depends in many places on sewers, on public sewer systems. Unfortunately, in my experience, and I work with this part of the law and development every day, there are dozens of cities and towns that are where sewer systems are preventing multifamily and affordable housing. I'll just give you a quick list of some of the things that I am seeing in my practice right now. Misrepresentations of how much capacity, sewer capacity is available. Refusing to approve sewer connections or capacity on the ground that we are studying our sewer system. And the study has been going on in some cases for more than 10 years. Assigning specific gallonage caps to specific properties that lock in a particular land use, such as no more gallonage than would accommodate a single family home. It's a backdoor way for used sewers to control land use. Creating capacity caps for transmission lines that my engineer consultants tell me are not industry standard or practice. Adopting town sewer maps that label land as sewer avoidance areas with no apparent justification. There are some towns that have purchased sewered land, which is perfectly developable, as open space to prevent development. Many towns have a policy prohibiting sewer extensions except to remedy failing septic systems. I have another application where the required formula for sewage calculation is to require, even for a 1 and 2 bedroom apartment, the assumption of the same gallonage generation as a 3 or 4 bedroom house. And finally, a refusal to grant conditional sewer approvals if any part of the system needs a repair or an upgrade until that upgrade has been physically completed. In other words, it's perfectly acceptable to impose a conditional approval, but some towns refuse that. So these are actual steps that are being used now in Connecticut towns to prevent, slow down, impede affordable housing and multifamily housing. And I want to commend the sewerage group on the job they did. And I'll apologize, maybe for not bringing this up earlier, but as I said, I was concentrating on my own group and trying to stay in my lane as speaking only for my group at these meetings. But now I think I've been somewhat liberated from that role. Last comment is the recommendations 3A and 4C in the sewerage group, which deal with the state plan of conservation and development and the infamous locational guide map. We need to remember our history here. In 2006, the locational guide map became a color-coded map of the entire state, and the adopted policy was that sewers and state-administered Clean Water Act funding were prohibited if any property was shown on the locational guide map as a medium green or light green color, a preservation color or a conservation color. As we pointed out to the General Assembly that during that time period, the map was at a scale of 1 inch equals 3,200 feet, impossible to scale. The criteria were very vague and hard to determine. But on top of that, in some towns, and we documented this to the General Assembly, town officials were urging the state to color broad swaths of the town medium green or light green to prevent higher density housing, and no other reason. It was an exclusionary zoning technique. So we pointed this out, and to their credit, in the 2013-2018 plan, OPM and DEP and the legislature curbed this by redefining the purpose of the locational guide map. So my recommendation is that we not go back to that era, because I think it was aside being difficult to administer, it was just a very upside down land use practice on a statewide basis. So again, my purpose in speaking today is just to put these ideas on the commission's radar screen. And I thank you, Mr. Heft and colleagues, for listening to me for a few minutes. Thank you very much.
I'm going to call on my illustrious co-chair here to start off. Go ahead. Please.
No, Mr. Hollister, I just wanted to I feel like I'm speaking right into the mic. I just wanted to thank you for putting those ideas on the table. I think it's important that we all continue to share ideas, particularly for individuals who are engaged in this work directly outside of this building. All of you provide particularly important perspective on some of the goals and values and in fact laws that we pass up here, and in terms of how they're implemented. So understanding them from the seat that you sit in is really important for all of us to hear. And I don't know that if you're able to share your comments in writing with the commission clerk so that we can have it be part of the record. But certainly I'd appreciate you sending me to me as well. And I think one of the big takeaways I take away that I'm getting from your comments are, like a lot of things on this issue and a lot of things in this building, it's a question of accountability and how we ensure accountability with the laws that are already on the books. Because you made a very good point. These things are already on the laws. Towns should be doing these things. They're not. I'm not quite sure what the appropriate accountability measure is. There's lots of ideas about what it should be. I don't know how good some of those ideas are, quite frankly. And I don't know how politically acceptable they are either. But I think it's a conversation that we have to continue to have and be honest with ourselves, and not have that conversation from a point of contention or tension, but from one of collaboration, so that we can actually get at some of the shared goals that I think everybody who's been involved in this process have around how do we develop more housing in the state of Connecticut to meet the needs of a broad spectrum of people who all deserve a safe, quality, and affordable place to live. So thank you for sharing your ideas. And I think some of them will be acted on, hopefully, in the near future.
Thank you. I will put that in writing for you. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Tim. And thank you, Representative. Just also want to note, with Tim, with your comments, which are terrific, and just kind of reminder as we're kind of looking through, once we get through the final report, where our recommendations back to the General Assembly, parts of it don't end there. While our commission work may be done, it's going to be, suggestions, anything for implementation, action steps are going to be that of the particular legislative committees, or if they're administrative, of the particular state agencies, and having communication with them, and possibly presentations that might be necessary, but they will be supplied with all of our background information. And just one note on the state plan of conservation development, for those that aren't aware, that is currently in process of being reviewed for the 2025 to 2030 plan. Office of Responsible Growth, working with the continuing committee, has been meeting with all of the state agencies, and there's a series of public hearings coming up, and we can make sure everyone has the link to the website, which has all the information on the updated state plan process going through. So again, thank you, Tim, for those comments. Are there any other comments on the draft final report that we have in front of us before we ask for Senator Wong?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank your fellow co-chair for their work and all the various committee members. And I'm appreciative of Mr. Hollister's comment as we begin this meeting. I want to reiterate that this is a step forward, and it is a very large group, and we have not all had an opportunity to spend the necessary quality time to kind of review all the various proposals and suggestions. So first and foremost, I want to compliment the working group for doing so. But I really do want to make a comment that this continues to be a very rough and moving forward work in progress. I'm eager for us to get back into the legislative session to have the committees of cognizance review and deliberate and have public input on the various working group proposals to really give it the great weight that it's necessary. So I appreciate the work and the efforts, and I'm honored to be a part of this working group of this committee. But I will reserve and abstain from voting yay or nay on this draft package. But know that I'm very much looking forward to taking the recommendations and the hard work of the working group and vetting it through a really thorough legislative process that will really engage in all the shareholders that will be impacted by this. It's complemented by the talent of the people of the working group that provided the work throughout the summer. But nevertheless, it's important to know it's a very, very big committee. Even though we have a quorum today, we're going to vote on a very, very important moving forward roadmap, and not all of the appointed members are going to be able to vote on this. So I'm going to abstain, but I look forward to working closely with everyone through the legislative process and engaging with all the shareholders to do the right thing for the greater good of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Corvallis-DeGraw.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to just say that I am truly grateful to all of the committees, because as you probably know, I sort of came in medias res in the middle of things, and it was a wonderful opportunity to hear from the different committees on the very specific pieces that they were tasked with. I'm also really grateful that we have so many experts on these individual committees, because ultimately, if we are going to move forward with some of these recommendations, it is their expertise and not perhaps, people who don't have the same level of expertise in these subject matters that we may have to weigh a little bit more. We certainly want the public to have as much commentary as they can as we have our public hearings, like we do every single session. But I'm thrilled that we had these experts so readily available. And that's why I am looking forward to voting on this today, and looking even more forward to what we can do with some of these recommendations during session to do what this committee is tasked with, which is moving Connecticut into the future and moving Connecticut forward. So thank you so much to all of you for all the great work.
Thank you, Representative. Are there any other comments?
I wasn't sure if this is the time for the thank yous or just the strictly comments on the report. I don't have the agenda.
Yeah, if we can lead us to comments on the
Okay.
report, because then we're going to have, you're more than welcome if you want to on that.
I can.
Terrific. If there's no other comments on the final report draft, is there a motion?
So moved.
Representative, would you just state a motion?
Yes, I move that we vote on the draft plan. Better?
I second that. Say is that, and Senator Moore seconded, was that that you made a motion to accept the draft final report, from the CCDF.
Agreed.
Is that correct? Thank you. And Senator Moore, is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask the clerk to do a roll call vote.
Calling the roll. Senator Needleman. Annika Lamar. Jason Rojas.
Yes.
Donna Hamsey.
Yes.
Stephen Kleppen.
Yes.
Lamont Daniels. Kylie Goslin.
Yes.
Ben Wintergrad.
Yes.
Greg Ugaldi.
Yes.
Francis Pickering.
Yes.
Elizabeth Gara. MD Rahman.
Yes.
Eleni Cabros DeGraw.
Yes.
Ryan Fazio. Joseph Zulo. Rick Lopes.
Yes.
Joe Gresco. Stephen Harding. Pat Callahan. Marilyn Moore.
Yes.
Jeff Luxembourg.
Yes.
Rob Sampson. Tony Scott.
Representative Scott votes yes.
Christine Cohen.
Yes.
Roland Lamar.
Yes.
Tony Wan.
As I mentioned, abstain.
Kathy Kennedy. Timothy Hollister.
Yes.
Aaron Kemple. Martin Heft.
Yes.
David Barkin.
Yes.
Binu Chandy.
Yes.
Jennifer Perry. Randy Pincus. David Elder. Roll call complete.
Thank you. And with that roll call, we have one abstention and I believe 19 yeses. My count is correct to our clerk.
That is correct.
Thank you. Then the motion carries. Thank you. With that, then would be our next step, which is the transmittal of the final report. And what will happen is we will obviously take the draft version label off, put today's date that it's been approved by the CCDF onto the report and transmit that out to the appropriate committees, which is Planning and Development, Environment, Housing, and Transportation Committees, and to the Secretary of Office of Policy and Management, all in accordance with provisions of statute section 11-4A. So we will transmit that report and make sure it is posted. And as I said, with the transmission of the report, we will make sure to include the links that have all of the sub work group information in it as well. So all the background information is available to our legislative committees. I'm going to call on my co-chair for a few comments here as we before we move on to our next piece of business here.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure that I offered my thank you to all of the members of the commission, but in particular to the staff who, like all of these initiatives for legislators, ensure that there's success at the end of a process like this. So particularly I want to thank my co-chair, Mr. Heft, who did the bulk of the co-chairing, admittedly, in this process, and really kept the wheels moving on our process, kept the meetings flowing, which is really important. And the result of all of his work is the report that we have in front of us today, which has a number of significant and important and well thought out recommendations for the legislature to consider. So I want to thank all the members for the time and effort that they put into this, and certainly to all the staff who ensured that we're arriving at today and submitting a report on time, which doesn't always happen with every commission and task force that is out there. So thank you for everybody, and I look forward to acting on some of these recommendations.
Thank you. And I will echo those remarks without repeating the same things again. So we'll leave it at that, but do thank everybody for your participation with that. So under Public Act 21-29, Section 13, at which time we present our final report to the legislative committees, our commission is terminated or completed at this point. So this does complete our work as the Commission on Connecticut's development in the future. But before we go on, I do want to ask if there is any other business to come up before we go to public comment and officially adjourn. So is there any other business that anybody has? And seeing none, is there any public comment? I know we didn't have any registered public comment, but I do offer anyone that's on the meeting if they have any public comment. Seeing none. With that, I would take a motion to adjourn and to terminate the Commission on Connecticut's development in the future at 3:32 p.m. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Representative. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. And again, thank you all for all of your hard work. Have a good rest of your day.